Welcome viewers, Dr. JWA, you theologist. Like and subscribe to help me, and comment to educate me, and share the video to help somebody else. Before I play this clip, watch the institutional contradiction expose itself. This is not merely a hearing about terminology, it is a confrontation over whether Australian law can still protect women after the 2013 Sex Discrimination Act changes, elevated gender identity without preserving clear, immovable sex-based boundaries. Senator Michaelia Cash presses the legal question in the prior video, but here Senator Henderson should be acknowledged for standing firmly within the examination, reinforcing the concern that women's sex-based protections cannot be treated as vague, negotiable or secondary. And the chair interjects, the Green leader interrupts, the Sex Discrimination Commissioner appears unable to give the clarity women require, and the room begins to tighten because the simple question remains, and there's thunder in the background and lightning, very timely. If male and female are not legally stable categories, how can women's rights remain legally stable? Well, they can't, can they? And this is where the matter becomes severe, almost catastrophic. Female privacy, dignity, sport, shelters, prisons, recovery spaces, and lawful boundaries cannot be protected by an institution that treats biological womanhood as administratively negotiable. The concern is not hostility towards anyone. The concern is institutional partiality, a legal framework that claims to protect women while making the meaning of women uncertain. And from a divine sovereign restraint perspective, male and female are not inventions of the state. They are created realities human authority was not meant to recognise, not meant to revise. And when law defies the restraint, the divine restraint, divine sovereign restraint, it does not liberate reality. It places women beneath the risk of institutional ambiguity. So watch carefully, watch really closely. Again, applaud to Senator Sarah Henderson. I'm sure her name is Sarah Henderson. Please forgive me. I have been watching her. She's been after, what's that lady that spent all the money? Anna, whatever her name was. But anyway, Sarah Henderson really does need to be applauded. This is not only about the Commissioner's answers, it's about what the institution can no longer plainly say.
Turn to the Lesbian Action Group action, and I haven't been in this committee for the whole time. So can I ask about the costs incurred by the Commission to prosecute the case?
This has been covered.
Oh, it has been covered.
No, not for the Lesbian Action Group. Sorry, it was for the
Right.
Giggle and
Okay, so I'm asking about the Lesbian Action Group.
Sorry, Senator Henderson.
You have the Lesbian Action Group.
So this was an action where the Lesbian Action Group sought to have their own event to protect the right for lesbians to gather as women determined by their own biological sex, and the Australian Human Rights Commission was found to have made an improper decision.
That's not correct.
Well, I'm paraphrasing.
Can I clarify?
I'm paraphrasing, if I could just finish my question.
Sure.
What was the costs incurred by the Commission in this case?
For the federal court proceeding?
Well, no, for all of the proceedings, if you could take me through each one.
I only have the costs at the moment for the federal court proceeding, which was $11,332 for senior counsel, $5,500 for junior counsel. I will seek instructions about the Administrative Review Tribunal.
And Commissioner, you wanted to add something in relation to this?
Costs for the tribunal.
Sorry?
I've got the cost for the
Thank
tribunal
you.
proceeding, which was $7,700 for counsel fees and $3,000 for independent witnesses, expert witnesses. And I was just clarifying that the federal court was an appeal from the tribunal decision. So the federal court's decision was that the tribunal applied the wrong test in making its decision. So just to clarify that. And it's remitted to the tribunal.
And so the Commission also sought costs. Did you seek any costs against the Lesbian Action Group at all?
No, we have not sought costs because they won at the federal court and they are seeking costs from the Commission.
And have you reached an agreement in relation to those costs?
No, not yet. It's in negotiation.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to ask the broader question. Why, when a group of lesbian women wanted to hold their own event, in effect, was this opposed by the Commission? What about the human rights of lesbian women to gather together without biological men identifying as women as part of their group?
So we applied our guidelines that we use for deciding whether or not an exemption should be granted. We sought submissions from various members of the public and then made that decision.
But Ms Cody, what I don't understand is that the rights of women and girls have been effectively expunged from the Sex Discrimination Act as a result of the full federal court decision and the stand of the Human Rights Commission. The rights of lesbian women seem to be of no interest to the Human Rights Commission. And yet I can sit here and say I identify as a man, even though I'm a woman, and in your world, you accept the fact that I'm a man. I mean, it is insane what is happening. And I think my own personal view is that the Australian Human Rights Commission has lost complete sight of the human rights of women and girls and men and boys in certain circumstances. And lesbian women and gay men, why are they not entitled to the same human rights? You fought tooth and nail against the Lesbian Action Group. It's wrong.
I would note, Senator, that I work day in and day out for the rights of women and girls and also for men to be able to participate in caring responsibilities. Currently, I have a project that I'm leading into military sexual trauma in the Defence Forces, which will specifically deal with the experience of violence against women and girls, particularly in the Defence Services. Additionally, I'm running a project on pregnancy and family responsibilities, looking at the experience of pregnancy and family responsibility discrimination and looking at some of the barriers that men face in dealing with their caring responsibilities and their willingness to and desire to take on some of those care responsibilities. I'm also active in prosecuting the positive duty on employers, looking at how workplace sexual harassment is a serious and ongoing issue for women and girls in our workforce. I am also involved in documenting the experience of workplace sexual harassment through the Speaking From Experience project. So I utterly reject your assertion that the Human Rights Commission is not advocating for the rights of women and girls.
Well, the situation now is your stand in the Tickle and Giggle case, I would put to you as appalling, because women and girls, and men and women, as biological women and girls, we no longer have any rights. And I have no issue about gender identity being a protected attribute in the Act. I have no issue at all, because there are many circumstances where we do not want to see people, gender identity discrimination in certain circumstances. But where we now have a situation in this country where prosecuted by the Australian Human Rights Commission, we no longer matter. And can I tell you what I'll tell you what the practical effect is, and I'd like you to answer this, because Senator Cash raised this issue about women's refuges. There is a women's refuge, a domestic violence refuge, and I'm not going to say where it is, because I don't want to in any way identify them. Men are prohibited to enter the refuge after 10 o'clock for the safety of the women who are residing there with their children. So after 10 o'clock, men are prohibited. So what is happening at this refuge is men are turning up at 9:45, often perpetrators, and they are saying, I identify as a woman, and you are compelled to let me in. And under the current state of the law, this refuge has no choice but to let these men in, with this absolute nonsense, which is putting at risk the safety of women who are fleeing family violence and their children. So what do you say to that? How can women have safety in a domestic violence refuge when men are fronting up and saying, I identify as a woman, let me in?
The safety of women and girls is absolutely vitally important in our society.
Well, you are compromising it.
No. Senator Henderson and Senator Cash. We've had a very orderly day today. We will not be changing how we've been working throughout the day, which is question, answers, and I have noticed a trend in very long opening remarks before getting to a question, which I would like to make very succinct.
Thanks, Chair.
I would ask you to refrain from making long opening statements before getting to your question. Commissioner Cody.
The safety of women and girls is of paramount importance. We know the widespread experience of domestic and family violence by women and girls. I would suggest in that situation that the logical thing to do would be to ring the police. If someone is trying to harm someone within the refuge, then the best response is to call the police. If there is grounds for someone to be arrested, then they will be removed from that refuge.
No, the issue I'm raising, Commissioner Cody, is that men are prohibited from entering this particular refuge after 10 o'clock. They're fronting up 9:45 at night and saying, I identify as a woman, you are bound to let me in. And the law is now such, compounded by the stance of the Australian Human Rights Commission, that women cannot even feel safe under those circumstances in a domestic violence refuge.
I disagree, Senator. I've made my response.
I was also just wondering if there was a question rather than a statement.
So I guess the question is, what do women do in those circumstances when men, who effectively are lying, they're just concocting some convenient, I identify as a woman at 9:45 at night so they can get into a women's refuge. I mean, that is just completely insane, Commissioner Cody. And I would put to you that the stance of the Human Rights Commission, and I include you, Commissioner, in this, has compounded the safety issues that women and children are now facing in this country.
The focus is harmful behaviour, Senator, and when there is harmful behaviour, such as someone trying to come into a refuge where people are seeking safety, then the best response is to deal with the harmful behaviour, and that is ring the police. If it is a criminal offence, they will be charged.
But there's no legal basis. What's the criminal offence?
Because they are being excluded. They shouldn't, if they're not accepted after 10 p.m. at night, then that's the grounds on which they could be excluded.
In your definition of women, a man has to be included and allowed in. That is the absurdity of this law in this country, which is being prosecuted by the Human Rights Commission. And I've had confidential discussions with the CEO of this refuge. She is beside herself. She has no legal basis to exclude these men because of the way men have now been redefined in our law.
Senator, I was just going to offer to speak to that particular refuge if they would like our assistance to manage that
do you know what?
How do you assist them? A bloke turns up and says he's a woman.
Mr. de Kretzer, I think you've done enormous harm to the progress for women and girls in this country by your stance.
Senator Henderson, I don't think...
So I don't believe
those reflections on the President or Commissioners sitting at the table is a fair reflection. I think you've heard from Senator Henderson. I'm speaking, I'm not asking for your interjections. Is an unfair reflection on people sitting at the table. I think they've articulated to you the work that is done. Now the President has offered to speak directly to the refuge if they have concerns in the ways that you've raised. I don't think that is an unreasonable offer from the President, given the serious nature of the concerns that you've raised. But I would ask you to refrain from making reflections on the people who are at the table.
Well, viewers, that exchange should leave Australians deeply concerned. The Chair's interjections and the interruptions do not remove the contradiction. They intensify it. Senator Sarah Henderson deserves to be saluted for standing firmly in defence of women's sex-based protections when the institution itself appeared unable to provide clarity. The Sex Discrimination Commissioner appeared unable to clearly explain how biological women remain protected as women under the current legal framework. In fact, she disintegrates into saying, ring the police. And that's not, in other words, we've caused the problem, we're contributing to the problem, but just ring the police. That's not in other words, they've created criminals. And that's not a minor failure of wording. It is an institutional exposure. The 2013 Gillard Amendments may have been presented as inclusion, but inclusion without firm sex-based restraint risks becoming partially against women. If gender identity can be overridden or destabilise female-only protections, then women are left carrying risks created by the very institutions claiming to defend equality. The danger is not that every identity claim is predatory. The danger is that legal ambiguity can be exploited by bad faith males when institutions refuse to maintain clear sex-based boundaries. Now, this is where divine sovereign restraint matters. Divine sovereign restraint is part of the constitutional values that are supposed to be observed, but they've been thrown out. And that's immediate, has to make everyone immediately aware and beware of corruption in the system. And that's not an accusation. That's what's happened here. Human law is not sovereign over male and female reality, but it's made itself that way. Parliament may amend statutes, commissions, and may interpret them. Courts may apply them, but no institution becomes safer, wiser, or more just by making created distinction unstable. And the Commissioner's visible relief at the end of the exchange only underlines the problem. The questions did not fail. It revealed what the institution could not answer. So credit must be given to where it's due. Senator Sarah Henderson, her interventions mattered because women's rights require more than bureaucratic language. They require lawful courage, biological clarity, and institutional restraint. And the final question remains, viewers. If the office responsible for sex discrimination cannot clearly protect women as women, then what is being protected? Women or the legal framework that made women's protection completely vulnerable and uncertain?